I mean, I'm really interested in science. If I hadn't got into filmmaking, I probably would want it to have been like a cosmologist or something. Like, I'm fascinated by space and things like that. And so, and it was more a case of like just looking for a realistic premise for how that, how aliens could have ended up here. And there was all sorts of possibilities, and I think an obvious inspiration was the Andromeda strain. So I got a chance to do that the way I imagined it would happen in this film, and Europa is. But then if you look at films like 2010, I mean, I love Arthur C. Clarke, and that's all Europa based. It's quite common knowledge among sci-fi fans about Europa. It's not like we've done anything new there. When I first started, it wasn't. I just wanted to make a monster movie. Then, as the characters started to appear, and we started to isolate down with the producers what this story would be, it became more of this love story. So for me then it was a case of, I don't like love stories, I'm a sci-fi fan, and I much prefer, I kind of felt like I knew the film I wanted to make, and I wanted it to be serious and subtle and artistic and all that sort of thing. And so it's like, okay, if it's going to be a love story, it's got to be one that I'd want to sit and watch. And so for me, the sort of films that did that were films like Lost in Translation and things. And so that was a big inspiration and sort of a basis of how to do it. And it's funny because, if you read on the internet, which you can't help but do when it's your first film, you have a little look, and there's some reactions against the fact that there's a love story in there, and it's not wall-to-wall monster destruction. But I kind of feel like there's loads of those films. Like, if that's what you want, there's 1,000 of them. I've got a load of rubbish ones that I give you for free. I don't want to watch them again. And so it was kind of a reaction to that. It was like I walk out the cinema in the summer blockbusters, not all of them, but a fair few, where you go, yeah, it looked amazing. It was an amazing spectacle, but I just didn't care about the characters, and the story was over the top. And so it felt like if I got the chance to make a film, then if anything, I would flip it the other way, and it felt like if the first thing that people said, because my background was computer graphics, if the first thing people said when they walked out the cinema was amazing special effects, then I felt like that I'm failed. You can just as equally look at the standard process of making a film, and I would sit with those people and say, well, why are you doing it this way? Isn't it terrifying? Like, isn't it terrifying that you're spending, 50 million to tell a story of some people in a room or in a street? Like, you're spending 50 million. You could solve like some poor country's national debt with that kind of money, and it's like, and it's just someone walking down the street. There are people walking down the street now. Just go and film them. Like, just go film them. Like, give me the 50 million. Or let's go fix the world's problems with this, as opposed to make a movie. And I find that's the weird shock, is that people do it a different way, and it feels like they had to. Because there's this, I feel like what's maybe happening with digital technology now and filmmaking is that if you don't work in a group of like 100 people, everyone assumes that you're not a team player, that you've got social issues, or you're in a control freak, or any of these things. And the reality is that no one says that about writers. When you write a book on your own, no one says, oh, you're a control freak. Why don't you work with 100? Why don't you write a book with 100 people? If you make a painting on your own, if you write a song with a guitar on your own, all the other art forms, a lot of them, it's individuals or a couple of people, a handful of people that do the whole art. And filmmaking's for a long time been this factory process, like an industrial process, where you need hundreds of people. And that's just been because the technology involved is so expensive and so sort of difficult to... You really do need that production line to make it work, but now you don't so much. You can get the same look and the same spectacle with because of digital technology. You can achieve that on a much lower budget, and you can do it with a handful of people. And I feel like, for me, it's like I say, like if I could plug a wire into my brain and then hit record and just picture the movie, like that would be the ideal way of making a movie. There's no explosions in this film. So if you love explosions, I mean, my best advice is really go see something else, because we don't have a single explosion in the whole movie. So, and nothing's in slow motion either. So, and the camera doesn't fly around. There's nothing where you're looking this way and then it flies around to see it from the other angle, which I know is a disappointment for a lot. Obviously, I did have limits to how much CGI I could create. There's about 250 effect shots in the film, and that was probably my limit for the amount of time I had.
What happens? Like, is it just you die, your brain melts, or you just literally it's just a time thing? Could you do 50,000 of these shots if you had the time?
Technically, you do. You can. It's called a career. They're just for different films and projects. But I would have kind of happily carried on if it was worth it. It was just that you kind of think, okay, I can only put so much CGI into this film, and we could have put a lot more creature stuff. Probably could have easily, but it was more a case of you have an emotional response, because ultimately there's like a hierarchy to everything, and everyone says the most important thing is story, and I think there's just one above that, which is an emotional reaction. Like, you can have a great story, but if it's not emotionally affecting you, that's all everyone's really trying to do when they make a film, or they should be, or when they're doing any sort of music or anything, is that you try to create an emotional reaction, or at least a thought in the audience. And so that's the top one. But it's like, and then to create an emotional reaction, there's a story. To create a story, there's actors and characters, and to create that, there's scenes, and then there's shots, and then there's things within shots, and it feels like everything's all to do with creating an emotional response. And it's like, but if you go into the bottom of the food chain, and all you're hunting for is an emotional reaction to something, then you end up with all these pieces that it kind of works out. Yeah, good question. I mean, there's stuff in there that I know is technically rubbish, and I don't in any way stand by it and say, oh, look at this is great. I'm just kind of like, oh, I hope my visual effects friends don't kind of just ignore that bit. There's a lot of technically rubbish stuff in there. I like stuff. I'm sort of proud of stuff when it's really, really simple, and yet no one even notices there's an effect in there. And because there's this standard sort of approach to visual effects, which is what's the maximum effort we can go to. If you read a lot of the articles in magazines, they all brag about how, say they're doing a character like me, they all brag about how they wrote their own software for the hair, and how they kind of did all the simulation of the cloth on the collar as it did this, and it's all about how much stuff they've put in, and oh god, and we put the little detail and you'll never spot it, but we had a guy working for weeks on that third pixel to the left. And you think, that's why it costs 30 million to do visual effects, because you're employing someone who probably wants to do something else anyway, to I don't know if I can say this, you can beat this out, right? It's called like pixel fucking. You employ someone to pixel fuck that area of the screen, and it's no one in the audience cares. And I think the fact that what I'm most pleased about is that the greater majority of people have come back out of the film and said, I didn't really spot the effects, and I know they're there, I know they are totally spottable, but the fact that a fair few people have said that proves to me, not that my effects are any good at all, it just proves to me that you don't need to put that much effort in. You don't need to put as much effort in as visual effects companies often do. What's most important, I think way more important than the effort you put into the effects, is the effort you put into the shots. Like the effort if the shot feels believable from the start, then when you stick something in, you'll get away, it'll look so much more real. So every single shot in the film was based on me really, really stood in a real environment with real people, with something really happening, and just shooting it, and not kind of doing any green screen or layering it all up. And get pigeonholed. There's a million worse pigeonholes to be stuck in, and science fiction I love, post-apocalyptic stuff I love, monster movies I love. If the door was just going to lock now forever, I'd quite happily stay in the room I'm in. I quite like that subject matter, but I do really want to do other type of films, and like in my mind, at least half the films I make, in my naive mind at the moment, if I ever make another film, would be not science fiction or anything. It would be a normal film, but I don't know. I don't really know what they would be right now. I've got a whole bunch that in my mind that I'd like to make one day, but I sort of think it's just the next film basically is, if I'm lucky, is going to be with Timur Bekmambetov producing, and he's basically financing it so that we can do it outside the studio system, so that we don't have to kind of compromise creatively. And it's science fiction, and the tagline that's very vague is an epic human story set in a futuristic world without humanity. So it's a contradiction, but it will make sense one day, hopefully.